Letters come in an uppercase form and a lowercase form. Like, we all know this, right? How, on the whole, we use lowercase letters and then save their bigger forms for things like proper nouns and the start of sentences. Yeah, I'm sure we are all more than familiar with this idea. These two forms of letters are something drilled into us from a very young age. And on the whole, uppercase and lowercase letters do look pretty alike, with one form just being bigger than the other. Take the letter of S. In both forms it's a squiggly little line. Likewise, O is just a circle, regardless if it's upper or lowercase. But then we have a letter like Q, which looks super different in either form. R, which also doesn't have a matching form. And even the first letter of our alphabet, A, looks resoundingly different depending on what case it is in. What's going on here? Now, before we continue, I need to say a huge thank you to Incogni for sponsoring today's video. While your personal data is all across the internet in places you know about like your social medias, you may not know that things like your phone number, email address, and even your actual address can end up in weird websites that you didn't even know existed. Seriously, I'm not joking. I googled my own name to see what would come up, and after digging around for a couple minutes, I found my name on a website I had never heard of, linked to the names of my actual family members, as well as the address of the house I grew up in. Things like this are super freaky, and in most cases, that information is there forever. These sites aren't just gonna take it down. This is where Incogni comes to the rescue. Incogni tracks down and removes your personal data from multiple sites, from online directories, people search sites, and even commercial databases. This is all fully automated for hundreds of known data brokers that Incogni have on their systems, with data brokers being companies that collect and sell your personal information and data without your consent. And for any site not already on their systems, you can use their custom removal feature to take down almost everything that's exposed about you online. Just send them a link and your dedicated privacy expert will handle everything else. Incogni can help you pretty much wipe yourself off the internet completely. And I'll be brutally honest with you all right now. Before they reached out to me, I had no idea Incogni even existed. Like most sponsorship emails I get, I just presumed it was junk. But as I read into who exactly they were and what they do, I realized I had to work with them and share their incredible service with you all. Visit incogni.com/nameexplain to try them out, as well as get an incredible 60% discount on their fantastic services. Thank you once again to Incogni for sponsoring today's video. Anyway, let's take a look at the whole alphabet for a moment. I feel we can split it into 3 groups in regards to differences in their case forms. The first group being the letters which look exactly the same in both forms, just bigger or smaller. This includes those already mentioned like S and O, but also other letters like C, K, M, P, U, V, W, X, and Z. Then we have the letters which look slightly different in either case. Those that don't look identical but have a similar enough design. T, I feel, is a great example of this. Sure, it's not identical in both cases, but both forms capture the essence of a vertical line with a horizontal line going through the top of it. I also include in this category letters like F, H, I, J, L, N, and Y. Then we have those letters that we are really interested in for today, those that look completely different in either form, like A, Q, and R, which I already mentioned at the top of this video, but I also think B, D, E, and G also really fit into this group too. And yeah, that's all the letters of the alphabet accounted for. It's worth noting that this is just my grouping of them. You may feel like one letter in particular belongs to a different group, and you know what? That's all good. Go tell me how wrong I am down in the comments below or something. But regardless of what group each letter actually belongs in, it's clear to see that some letters look way different in their capital forms, right? So how exactly did we end up with that being the case? Well, to answer this, we need to go back in time to the origins of the Latin alphabet itself, which unsurprisingly comes from those Latin-speaking Romans. I mean, kind of anyway. Their alphabet was inspired by the likes of the Greeks, the Phoenicians, and the Etruscans, but for this story we can just start with the Romans. They had this neat little writing system, which is very similar to the one we use today, though it does have some differences. Not only did they lack certain letters like J, U, and W, they also didn't have lowercase letters at all. To the Romans, the alphabet existed in just one form, that form that we now call uppercase. And yes, I know, it's called uppercase and lowercase because printers kept the stamps in upper and lower cases, yada 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 yada. We all know that by this point, right? What this means is that everything the Romans wrote was in what we now call uppercase. It doesn't imply they were shouting all the time or anything, or maybe they were. The Romans were seriously angry, shouty people at times, I guess. But another key way in which the Romans and their use of the written language differs from us today is how they would physically write each of these letters. Today, letters, on the whole, are made tangible in one of two ways, either typed on a screen or scrawled onto paper. In Rome, however, the key way in which they inscribed these letters was by chiseling them onto stone. This could take a very long time and was tough, exhausting work. This way of writing these letters down helps explain to us why these letters we now call uppercase look the way they do. Most uppercase letters are made of straight lines and on the whole are way simpler in their design than lowercase letters we know today. This was all because they had to be carved into stone, so making these symbols as simple as possible helped immensely in this process. But obviously these symbols were not carved into stone forever, right? Papyrus, the grandparent to our modern paper in a lot of ways, eventually found its way to Rome, and it allowed these letters to be written far more freely and quickly. These letters were freed from their rigid structures that stone chiseling forced them into, and when written quickly with human hands, they became far more curved and flowing. This led to the creation of something known as Roman cursive. This was a shorthand way of writing, and resulted in many letters looking somewhat different to their original forms, which we now know as the uppercase letters. This was one of the go-to handwriting scripts used in ancient Rome all the way until the Middle Ages, where it was usurped by the Carolingian minuscule in the 8th century. This was a script established by Charlemagne during his educational reforms, hence why it's named as such. Yeah, Charlemagne means Charles the Great. At least I think it means Charles the Great. I should check that, but yeah, that's what it means. Charles Carolingian, that's how we got there. I'll double check that quickly. Just checking it now. Yeah, it does mean Charles the Great. Awesome, I thought I knew that. But anyway, his script was heavily based on Roman cursive, and it's widely seen as the basis of the lowercase alphabet we all know and love, I guess, today. This cemented the idea that the Latin alphabet had two forms which would go on to be called uppercase and lowercase, and eventually the rules around when we use each case would come into being. But what all of this shows us is that the lowercase letters came into being basically because people were getting lazy with writing out the letters. Well, lazy might be an over-exaggeration, but what I mean by that is that when people had the ability to squiggle words onto papyrus, as opposed to painstakingly carving them onto stone, it allowed people to write much quicker and way more freely, which allowed these precise letters, which came into being to be carved into stone, to become smaller, rounder, and a tad more bunched together. And it's through understanding why we have lowercase letters in the first place, as to how we can figure out why some lowercase letters look very different to their uppercase counterparts. Let's go back to my breakdown of the alphabet where I placed each letter into one of those three categories in relation to how different they look in either form. There's something of a pattern in all of this, I feel. The letters that have more unique lowercase forms are also the letters which have more complex uppercase forms. Take those letters that have no difference between forms. S is just a curvy line, so when it comes to writing it in cursive, it was easy enough to just jot down. Same with the likes of O, X, V, and C. They're all incredibly basic shapes, which translate well into being written in some form of cursive. Then we have those letters that look somewhat different in their lowercase form, like F, T, and H. These once again are fairly simple shapes, but do require a little bit more brain power to put to paper. Often they require lifting your pen up and starting a new line. With uppercase H in example, you'd have to write the two vertical lines and then the horizontal. Compare that to a letter previously mentioned like O or V, where you can just bash it out in one stroke. Bash it out in one stroke. That sounded better when I wrote it down. It sounds kind of weird when I say it out loud. Oh, hopefully that doesn't come back to haunt me. When it came to writing these guys in cursive, it meant that people would have to adapt them slightly, as a key point in cursive is to not raise your pen from the paper. This resulted in things like lowercase h losing its top right vertical line, or lowercase f's two horizontal lines being merged together. And then of course we have the letters this whole video is actually about. Those weirdos that look nothing like their smaller selves. The uppercase form of these guys are undoubtedly the most complex letters to write. Take A an example. It's an upside down V with a line going through it. Or G, which features a semicircle followed by a short vertical line and then a horizontal line on top of that. Or even R, which contains no less than a vertical line, a semicircle, and a diagonal line. This is some seriously complex stuff. Well, complex in relation to the rest of the alphabet anyway. In reality, all of these letters are pretty easy to scroll down. Like, you don't need to go get your compass and protractor out every time you need to write an R or something. But as these uppercase letters do require a tad more brain power than the previously covered letters, it means that they would logically be the ones that got adapted most when it came to writing quickly by hand in cursive. This resulted in letters like R, which when written out quickly over time, its semicircle and diagonal line just kind of merged into one stroke, or how Q, when being written out quickly, ended up looking like a backwards P. People didn't want to lift their pen when doing the dash through the bottom right, and instead just drew the entire stroke coming out from that part of it. G is another great example too. Its little right angle at the bottom got shifted into being the looping element underneath it. And A is a really interesting case. It went from looking kind of like an Eiffel Tower to its more basic, rounder form. In fact, lowercase a ended up with two different forms entirely. But why that is the case is something we can save for another time. But from my research, and a tad of my own hypothesizing, it seems that the key reason as to why some letters look completely different in upper and lowercase comes down to the simple fact that people in the past got really lazy when it came to writing them out. But this laziness clearly won in the long run, as it's these unique letters that many of us are still writing to this very day. And once again, a huge thank you to Incogni for sponsoring today's video. Go visit incogni.com/nameexplain and start using their amazing services with that incredible 60% discount they are offering viewers of Name Explain. Name Explain depends on viewers like yourself supporting the channel financially on Patreon, so a huge thank you to everyone who does. Donating just $1 a month helps the channel amazingly and gets you bonuses including ad-free videos, exclusive content, the power to request ideas to be made into actual Name Explain videos, and your name at the end of the video with all these awesome people. Visit patreon.com/nameexplain or click the link down below to find out how you too can support the channel. Thank you. Thanks for reaching the end of the video. Why not watch another and subscribe to keep up to date on all things Name Explain. You can find myself on Instagram where I'm NameExplainYT and join the Facebook group Friends of Name Explain to talk with myself and other name nerds. All that will be linked down below. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video and once again, thank you all so much.